You know Verdi, Nevada. It's that cute little lumber town.
Did you just say lumber town?
Yeah, lumber town.
That's what I thought you said.
We'll get to that one in a minute. That cute little lumber town nestled in the Truckee River Canyon, right outside of Reno. It's so much more than meets the eye. In fact, that little town has a whole history that you didn't even know about. I find it best to start these little tales at the beginning. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna rewind it back, like way back, when a little place called ONeills Station sat right where Verdi sits today.
What? You've never heard of ONeills Station? Don't worry, no one else has either. That's why I'm here. Back to 1852.
Felix O'Neill was headed west to get himself some of that California gold when he noticed what he thought would be the perfect spot to build a toll bridge, right over the last crossing of the Truckee River before it heads up the steep ascent to the summit of Dog Valley Hill. He immediately sent for his wife and daughter, and together the three of them ended up building quite the operation. By the time the 1860s rolled around, not only was ONeills Station making the map, and all of the maps, the very, very busy stage stop that was O'Neill's had a sturdy log toll bridge, store and trading post, large hotel capable of rooming 300, and he even built a grassy nook that overlooked the majestic Truckee River. This was quite the hotel, and according to sources from the time, it was always at maximum capacity. With the 200 to 300 people traveling over the Hennis Pass per day, all paying a toll to Mr. O'Neill, things were going pretty well for the O'Neill family. That is until the Great Flood of 62. 1862, that is, when the O'Neill's Bridge was washed out. And with his 10-year toll franchise coming to an end, he decided it was time to move on to drier pastures and sold his bridge to the up-and-coming lumber magnate, John P. Folks. Where the story of ONeills Station started with a bridge, the story of Crystal Peak starts with trees. Lots and lots of trees. Because at this time in history, trees were better than gold. Everybody needed lumber. Lumber for the gold fields in California. Lumber for the houses that were springing up all along the Hennis Pass. Lumber for the Transcontinental Railroad. And lumber for the silver-laden streets of the Comstock. This gold mine of an area had wall-to-wall trees.
I'm going to have to interject for a second there. Wall-to-wall trees? But there aren't any trees in that area.
Be patient. I told you we'd get to that later.
Okay, I get it.
Several lumber companies popped up in the area. The largest of which was the Crystal Peak Lumber Company, owned by that same gentleman who just bought the toll bridge. And he laid out what started in 1864 as a small lumber camp to house the workers for the rapidly growing Crystal Peak Lumber Company. As rough as it was, its strategic location right at the entrance of the famous road proved very, very lucrative for the up-and-coming town.
His progress was quick, with the rich, living action of a prospering community. Everywhere the marks of growth and development. There were expanding stores, there were sturdy homes, and they continued to build for tomorrow's generation. Much of their support came from the big mill at the edge of the town. But the source of their living was in the forest that surrounded them. These were lumber people, and timber was their living.
But it wasn't long before this little lumber camp grew to be quite the lively town, full of the typical rough and tumble types that the lumber industry brings.
After hard work comes time for play, and the woodsman plays as hard as he works.
Late night drinking, bar fights, the occasional murder, and not a woman in sight. And as the town quickly grew in importance, it finally got a female citizen, thank God. And it even opened a post office in 1864 with the infamous war hero and ex-sheriff of El Dorado County, Colonel David Buell, as its first postmaster. It was also advertised as one of the most healthiest towns in the West. However, the moniker was not lived long, as later that year it was reported that several of the town's members became sick with mountain fever.
It's gonna be okay. It was just from the whiskey. Wait, what is whiskey-induced mountain fever, you ask? Well, it isn't the worst hangover ever. It's actually a form of scurvy, which is a vitamin deficiency, because it turns out replacing water with whiskey isn't always the best idea. Who knew?
But you know those lumberjacks, they love to pull a cork. On their quest to conquer the world. Back in 1861, the Central Pacific Railroad finally realized that it might be beneficial to have a good wagon road in front of the tracks they were laying down. They quickly bought out the Truckee Turnpike Company and formed the Dutch Flat Donner Lake Wagon Road. Whew, that's a mouthful. The DFDLWR was complete and met up with the Hennis Pass in 1864, right at the top of Dog Valley Hill, where the swanky new Bowers Station had just been erected. Also at the top of Dog Valley Hill sat the Hennis Pass Turnpike Company's toll station. With the Central Pacific now making Crystal Peak its new headquarters, the town's population soared. And by 1867, Crystal Peak had officially become the most populated town in Nevada. With Central Pacific's promise of a shiny new train station, which would be completed in November of that year, the lots of Crystal Peak went up 20-fold. New businesses were popping up left and right. This town was the town to be in, and everyone wanted a piece of that Crystal Peak pie.
So right about now, we're all thinking, what exactly happened? How is there literally nothing left of Crystal Peak today? Where did all the town go? In order to be able to explain this accurately, we're going to do a little lesson on checkerboard maps.
You see, the railroad, they got paid in the form of land grants. Now, these land grants were given in the rears, meaning they had to lay down so much track before they could get paid. Now, they were paid in land, but they weren't able to just take any land. There were a few stipulations. Well, the railroad has its right-of-way to lay tracks across already owned land. They did not have the right-of-way to take said land, meaning anyone with a pre-existing American land grant could keep their land. Also, in order to keep the railroad from having a monopoly, they were only granted land in a checkerboard pattern, with the most valuable land being on either side of the new tracks. In the case of Crystal Peak, where most of the land was already owned, railroad's precious checkerboard would be looking more like Swiss cheese. And in these cases, they felt it best to switch and lay down the tracks elsewhere. As a way to ensure no one acquired any land in their now new track location, they could not let anyone know of the change of plans. So they continued their ruse and just kept promising the townspeople of Crystal Peak they would be getting the brand new railroad station. But in 1868, the word got out, and the townspeople of Crystal Peak were devastated. Overnight, the valuable land became literally worthless.
This is a ghost town, a dead and empty shell, crumbling in malignant decay. nothing moves, nothing lives. There were few homes fit to live in, just scarred skeletons and bits of furniture, and much despair. Didn't need homes anymore because there was no longer any reason for people to live there. Last night, the community stopped living. There was no work for the saws, no work for the men, leaving empty beds, and the people would go away. Their fine plans for tomorrow abandoned because there was no support for their future.
So we're actually standing right here where ONeills Station was. Now ONeills Station sat right here behind me in this flat area right here. Take a look and see what's going on in Crystal Peak today. I know there's nothing really much to see here today, but 150 years ago, this was a very different scene.
This train don't carry no liars. This train, my Lord. This train don't carry no liars. This train, my Lord.
We are here at the Crystal Peak Cemetery, where the only citizens left of the once thriving mining/logging town of Crystal Peak.
Don't carry no liars, don't carry nothing but the holy fire. Lord, 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 Lord. Whoa, 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 whoa.
So what's really sad here is right here behind me, these are all graveyards. You can actually see the undisturbed earth. There's countless people buried right here. The problem is there was a number of fires that came through here, and all of the gravestones were actually taken out. So by the fire, and so we really don't have anything left. So these are just the unmarked graves of the lost souls of Crystal Peak.
Don't carry no stone, no snuff, just a dollar bag of smoke.